Alright, so cool. Alright, so I'm gonna just keep going back and forth. Let's see if it works here. Yes, okay, cool. Alright, so quick overview, guys, of today. This is going to be week 1, so I do have a little C.H.A.M.P.I.O.N that we'll get through as we go through today's focus. So what we need to focus on is just pretty much 3 main takeaways from today, which will be kind of beliefs and mindset, fixed versus growth, as well as kind of identifying some of our priorities and our goals. Oftentimes, a lot of my clients will come to me and they're like, okay, I want to train for a race, and then they look at their schedule and they don't have time to train. And they just jump in the race. And like, oh, just ran a half marathon, didn't train. And you're just like, cool. So you want to make sure you're setting yourself up for success. A big foundational part of just even being able to train for any type of race is making sure your schedule is on point. This is one of the most often overlooked things. People overcommit to things, and we're going to address just some tactics on how to figure out if something needs to be on our schedule or if something's even important for us to even put it on. And then kind of lastly, we'll get into a little bit of kind of some routine upgrades, as well as just kind of checking in on what we're doing on a day-to-day basis to serve kind of our longer-term goals. Because oftentimes, when we're scheduling something, we schedule some things that don't really matter, and then we're finding that all of our time is gone. So that's one of the things I think is really often overlooked and people just don't take into consideration when they're starting any type of training. Okay, cool. All right, so my story with obstacle racing started actually at kind of a diner down the street. My mom had actually called me one day, and she was saying, like, she was really serious. Usually she's really, kind of joyous and really excited, and she was really somber and kind of like serious, and this is like very not her demeanor. So we went and got lunch, and then I was like, okay, what's going on? I'm kind of listening to her talk. It's just like she's definitely off that day. And so she looks at me and she's like, Nate, I have breast cancer, and if anything happens to me, I want you to look after your younger brother. And I was like, okay, is it treatable? Like, what can we work on? What stage are we at? And all of it was treatable. She was able to kind of go through that whole treatment plan, and she ended up, on the good recovery side of that type of experience. But through those next 6 to 8 months, as anybody knows, with any type of chemotherapy and all of that, it's a pretty intensive type of treatment. You're going to hospital visits. You kind of don't know what's going on a lot of the time. Sometimes they're doing experimental treatment. Sometimes they're doing a couple different things, just trying to figure out what's happening for your specific diagnosis. So within kind of that 8-month period, I was kind of by my mom's side a lot of the time, and I was just watching how she handled each phase of the treatment. She'd come in, be really excited about, like, all right, let's get it done, let's get it on to the next phase, let's take one phase at a time, let's work with what we know, let's not think about what could happen, let's just one step at a time. And throughout kind of this process, I was learning how she was focusing on that positive outcome, how she was focusing on, okay, what can I do to get to that next step? And it was never, okay, I have this thing, I'm done, I'm out. It was always, okay, we're going in, I'm fighting this, we're going to keep going to the next stage. And that mindset was something that I really learned from her. And then as I kind of, we finished all of our treatment, and she kind of went into remission, and then again, kind of went on the backside and was in the better end of that treatment plan. I was like, okay, I'm going to try to find one of the toughest races that I can. It's kind of like a tribute to my mom's struggle with breast cancer. So that kind of led me to the Spartan Beast, actually. Go ahead. So I've done a couple of different races. I've been racing for about 8 years. One of the years I think I did 220 miles of competitive racing. I think I did 3 triathlons in a year. The third one was a half Ironman. So really just dove headfirst into this whole world of racing. One of the big problems with diving headfirst into racing is that you are figuring it out as you go. And I found that throughout this kind of 8-year or 8 seasons of racing kind of period, that most people don't really know how to train for these type of extreme races. They look at obstacle racing like, oh, it's like a 5K, it's a fun run, and it's more of on the lines of like a triathlon, closer to your half Ironman stats, right? That's how you kind of have to approach the training here. You have to think, you might have at least 3 months to train for these type of races, right? So you can go to the next slide. So, like I was saying, my first race, yeah. Back. Let's go back. Come on. Let's go. Let's see. Okay. Oh, let's leave it there. So one of my first races was the Spartan Beast, like I was saying. I signed up through Groupon, and actually, I'd signed up with one of my friends, and we were like, okay, we'll just jump in and we'll do it. And I don't think I really trained that much at all. I think I had like a 30-day program that I went through. Didn't really understand how to train for these type of races. So when I first started, I think like a thunderstorm had torn through the course right before my scheduled start time. It was one of those courses where you like step in the mud and like it's a suction cup thing and you can't move your foot, and then it just slides all over the course. And this is like the longer version of Spartan race, so it's the closer to 14, 16 mile, like half marathon type of one. Wasn't too many hills, but it's just a lot of running that I was not prepared for. And I got about halfway through before I got hypothermia, and then my racing partner was like, "You're going too slow, I'm out," and he ditches me halfway through the course. This is my first experience in racing. So what I found is that most people have similar type of experiences, and then they never come back, right? And how to prevent a lot of that is kind of a lot of the systems that I've come up with. But it's just being very cognizant of what it is that you're committing to, why you're doing it in the first place, and then ultimately understanding what you're hoping to get out of it. So with my focus here, it wasn't necessarily about me just kind of finishing a race, it was about that kind of tribute and kind of keeping that my mom's in my thoughts as I was going through, and that helped me continuously get through the course. Eventually, as I got deeper into racing, I kind of learned a little bit more about the ins and outs of racing, kind of got involved with the community, and then obviously jumped into fitness as a profession as well. So a lot of learnings just in that process, but a lot of that wouldn't happen if I wasn't open to exploring that, wasn't open to actually focusing on how can I solve these problems. A lot of people will show up and be like, okay, I can't do it, I'm out, and that just kind of, it's a non-starter. There's no self-evaluation, there's no self-awareness of even why they think a certain way. It's just, this is it, I'm out, that's the truth, and then I'm going, right? Alright, so let me just jump in this real fast, see where I'm at. Yeah. So this kind of brings me to a lot of the belief systems that I think people don't examine. So with my mom's perspective, for example, she always had this kind of very fluid, okay, this is the step I'm at, this is what's going to happen, I'm constantly going to search for what it is that will help me move forward. And this is kind of the beliefs and mindset. A lot of people don't actually examine a lot of this, so I kind of use the happy owl here as an example. But the takeaway here is essentially that beliefs oftentimes are more fixed things that people don't necessarily examine. Sometimes people are like, oh, this is just the way this is, that's how it's going to be, it's never going to change, right? And you can already kind of tell what's going to happen when someone adopts that perspective, right? They don't look for any type of way around a problem. They look for, okay, there's the problem, that's it, I have to deal with this, there's no other way to deal with it, and it usually results in kind of putting in the least amount of effort and then kind of giving up. Now, mindset is more of a fluid kind of thing. It's more of a daily practice. Think of it as an approach to kind of a constant journey of learning and evolving. So with developing type of a positive mindset, you have to learn what it is that you're focusing on, what you're equating meaning to, and ultimately what kind of questions that you're asking. So now, what I'm essentially getting at here is the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions that you ask. A lot of people will look at a problem and they'll just focus on the negative aspects of the problem. I see a wall, I don't know what to do. It's here, I have to do burpees, I guess I'm doing burpees, right? So they just think themselves out of even attempting an obstacle, or they think themselves out of even attempting to find another solution. And you see this a lot in the corporate environment where people only go one route, they don't think there's any other option, and there's no room for error. Just, I'm doing this is the only way to do it. Joe said that was the answer, we're going with that. It's like, where did you come up with that idea, right? So it's bringing back the idea that there has to be some kind of belief system, but also you have to have more fluidity when approaching problems, right? Nothing is really as static as you think it is. So here are kind of some examples of some questions. You can write some of these down if you want. Again, I'll be posting the slide up so you can see it, but essentially, I'd like to highlight some of the things here, just to give you an example of some better questions to ask if you're focusing on a day, you're focusing on some problems. I'm just going to kind of read through a few of them. So, what have I given today, and what ways have I been a giver today? So, in this kind of framework of looking at the day, you're thinking of it in terms of contribution. A lot of people will show up, they're what can I get out of this? And they wonder why something doesn't work out for them, because they're only looking at it from a kind of zero-sum game of what can I get out of it, instead of how can we both benefit from the scenario. Okay. Second one here is what I learned today. Now, I know a lot of people hesitant to use the word learn. What kind of skill set did I learn? You know, think of it in terms of how did I improve today? Is there anything exciting that was different? Right? It's getting back to that concept of what was different. What did I notice that maybe was a little bit of a pattern break that and then this is a bigger question, more of a high-level question, but how is today added to the quality of my life? Right? How can I use today as invest in my future? And this is one of those like really high-level questions that people don't even try to address because there's a lot to unpack in that. But when you start thinking this way, when you start thinking, okay, how am I consciously creating the life that I want? You start making very different decisions in your life, right? You start thinking, okay, am I going to just sit here, zone out, watch Netflix, ignore my family, wonder why my relationships are suffering? Like, these are all factors, right? You can't just put in the least amount of effort and expect other parts of your life to all of a sudden be on the same level, right? You have to put in some work, you have to make slight shifts. I'm not saying you have to maybe just zone out, but maybe you include your spouse, your partner with that Netflix night, so then they feel more included. It's a slight shift, but it's not that different from what you're already doing, right? These are just slight mindset like tweaks that end up kind of leading to a different type of outcome that maybe you haven't even thought of because you kind of were on autopilot. So you don't want to remove the idea of choice in a lot of your decisions. You want to think, okay, how can I make this a better outcome for everybody involved? And as you can see, you can go down through a lot more, but there's a lot there, and again, I'll post the slide again so you can kind of look through it. But just I want to get you thinking in terms of how to address some of these other issues in your life and just how to focus on things in a different way. So this brings us back to the fixed versus growth mindset. So back to the mindset of fluidity, right? One of the bigger things is the fixed mindset kind of suggests like an innate ability to do like things are never going to change, right? This is that kind of stubbornness, like I know everything. You have this kind of like knee-jerk reactionary things, and it's not really really well thought out oftentimes. Sometimes a lot of this stuff comes from maybe hand-me-down beliefs. Either sometimes our parents influence us subtly. We're not even aware of where these things are coming from. So it's thinking of like, okay, why bother improving? Why even try? And when we get to the obstacle race, it's like, I can't do that. I'm not going to do it. That's ridiculous. I'm out, right? So it's the same type of approach of you've already in that mindset, in that split-second decision, decided that you know what's going to happen, and you haven't even tried yet. So that's one of the things you have to be really aware of when you're in a course, when you're out in life. Are you making decisions where you're already removing your option for choice before you even have done it? Right? Which brings me to the growth mindset. So again, it's kind of that situations viewed as something you can improve on through practice, right? So the idea of constant improvement through practice, through constantly working towards a solution, through trying out and testing new things. So an example of that kind of obstacle race scenario is, okay, maybe I don't know how to do this, but I trust in my ability to figure this out, I can do this, right? So you start experimenting, you start trying things, and that gives you the opportunity to eventually move past that obstacle or move past that situation. All right, so that brings me to what I call the champion lifestyle. Like we're saying, the type of life that you want ultimately comes down to the questions that you're asking. Now, this is kind of the framework that we'll be going through for the next 8 weeks. So we're on the challenge the status quo, which really comes back to mindset, right? We're trying to figure out what it is that people have taught us. Does that serve us? And how is it making our lives better? Think of your mindset as a programmable software you can constantly update. A lot of times people are walking around with your Windows 95 type of programming. They never update it. That's just it. It's got bugs. It's not working. And they're just constantly stuck in this old way of thought. There's no type of growth. So that's something that we want to challenge today, which will serve us not only in your everyday life, but also on the course, because you're not going to think yourself out of making decisions. And I'll go through each of these as we go through each week. We just kind of know that they're focused on different aspects of making decisions, different aspects of leading towards a different solution. Good. Chromebook, gotta love it.
Those supposed to be videos?
What's that?
Are those supposed to be videos?
No, it's a image. So it's basically just and I can upload this on the group, but it's essentially how I've described it. Not working?
Nothing's popping up.
Okay. Try it. Oh, okay. Let's close that for a second. And we'll pause it. All right. Cool. Okay. Let's see. All right. Let's try one more time. Okay. Let's see if it'll show up. Okay. All right. So I'll post this in the group, but essentially, how I have it described, let me see if I can find it on my phone, is I have it in the kind of a quadrant aspect where it's kind of X and Y axis. And within that, it's kind of the path to what I'm calling the champion lifestyle. What I found is that throughout my journey, there's a couple different patterns that people fall into, and it revolves around their habits and their actions. And I'll do an extra teaching on this so you guys can keep up to date on what it is. But essentially I found that you kind of start in one part of the quadrant and you move to the next quadrant. So you're moving kind of diagonally. These are the steps in the champion acronym, moving us to that champion lifestyle. So that's kind of the thought process there. Where we're starting is what essentially I call the hamster, which is kind of we're on this daily circuit of doing things. We're on autopilot. We're not thinking our actions through. Okay? Now your other side of the spectrum, on the right side, on the lower right side, would be essentially what I call the fan. It's like, okay, you see people doing things, you're excited about it, but you're not really taking enough action. You're just kind of watching on the sidelines as kind of your life passes you by. You're not sure what to do. You're kind of paralyzed by a lot of choices, but you do want to become better. You're just not sure to do it. Then you have the upper left side of your quadrant, which is what I'm calling the squirrel chaser, the fitness enthusiast. You're doing way too much stuff. You don't know what the hell you're doing. You're all over the place, right? And I see this a lot. It's like, okay, I'm going to make some changes. I'm doing everything. And then you're just overloading your schedule, and you're not making any progress because you've basically scattered your energy and it's not focused, right? Which leads me to the champion lifestyle, which, as we addressed before, is systematic, step-by-step process of understanding why you're doing things, aligning with your longer-term vision, figuring out what your daily actions are and how that's serving you towards that longer-term goals that you're trying to achieve. So like I was saying, constant improvement is the focus for that second takeaway. We'll just kind of skip over this, make sure to figure out the image issues next time. Okay, yeah. So, which brings me to the next point. Like I was saying, when you're trying to do anything new in your life, you're oftentimes going to take on a lot more things than you're ready for. And that's kind of par for the course, unfortunately. Whenever you're trying to do anything, you got to test out what works for you. Not everyone has the right answers for your specific situation. You have to be aware of that. I've come up with a system that's worked for me. This has been my experience. I can teach you through the framework of it, but your own journeys will be very different, and you'll have your own decisions, but that umbrella type of high-level idea that you need to understand is that it comes down to you giving yourself choice and positioning yourself in the best possible solution as you're approaching every type of problem in your life. Okay? So the takeaway here is within that framework, you don't want to be that person who's either watching your life go by or taking too much action and not making enough progress. Which brings me to what you put on your plate in your life matters, what you're scheduling day to day, what you're doing actually does matter, because people think like, oh, this is really important to me, but it's not on their calendar, they're not making time for it, right? It's just a high level idea, so they're in that kind of fan mentality of, well, I see things happening, I want to be there, but I'm sitting on the bench, it's fourth quarter, I'm not in the game, right? And you don't want to be that person in your life, you want to be taking actions that align with the person that you want to become. So you have to take action, and that brings me to actually understanding what your priorities are and how to properly organize them. So let's see if any of these things work here. Okay, cool. So choosing priorities. So this is a little bit of small exercise I'll have you guys go through actually. But think of even today. Just break it down to just today. What are you doing today? And just go through questions 1 through 7. And just kind of rate an activity, right? So 1 through 10, with 10 being the highest, 1 being kind of like, I don't really care about it. And then think of, once you total all of these up 1 through 7, is it less than 50? If it's less than 50, it really shouldn't even be on your daily schedule. It's a waste of your time. If it's equal to or greater than 50, it's something that you should consider doing based on some of these questions below. So let's say, I'll give kind of a very vague kind of example. Maybe you have, I don't know, barbecue scheduled with your friends this weekend, and then one of your other friends just messages you, hey, let's go hang out at the bar like at this time. Okay, that wasn't planned, but you agreed to it. You really didn't really think about this. This isn't really something that you can outsource because it's you. But it's not on the calendar, so it really doesn't feel right, but you did it anyway. So as you're going through it, you're realizing like, oh, I just put myself in a situation where now I don't have enough time to get to the barbecue, or I'm showing up late, or I'm in this weird area where it's like, okay, I'm just eating up time in my life that's not really serving me at all, right? As you go through these questions, is this passion of yours? Like, all of these things, when you start making decisions this way and you start thinking this way, you're like, oh, okay, where is my time going? Because ultimately, the more things that you commit to, the less time you're going to have to work on things that you actually care about, right? So you can only make so many decisions in a day. So when you start trying to step into this new version of yourself, start trying to change things in your life, you have to be very careful on what you're agreeing to and how you're spending your time. Okay, so that brings me to understanding how to actually prioritize in the first place, which is understanding some of the roles that you already have in your life. So if you were to think about kind of the 5 major life roles and 5 major business roles, what would those be? In the sense of the 5 life roles, we all have kind of our own definitions of what that is. Okay, we're married, so we have a spouse, but then we're also, siblings, so we're a brother, we're also parents, and now we have that role. We're also a friend, so we're also whatever our role is in life. So as you start adding all of these things up, you start realizing, okay, this is where my time actually is going on the day-to-day. These are the things that I'm committed to in my life just based on the things that I have in my specific situation. Right? And then you have your major business roles, right? Which are, the things that we do just to survive, maybe our career, things that we're passionate about, maybe we're not passionate about, things that sometimes we can figure out what it is that we're working towards in our own business professional. So if you were to think about some of these roles in your life, just kind of quick exercise here. Why would you like some of these things in your life, and why are some of these things not serving you? A quick example is one of my clients, she's a mom, she just constantly agrees to dropping off the kids, picking up some of her siblings' kids, and then dropping them off at their practices, and it's doing a lot of disservice to herself because she's constantly running out of time at the end of the week. She already works 6 days out of the week, so she has only one day to herself, and she's filling that one day by doing other roles that really aren't her responsibility. She's doing things that are, while they might help somebody else out, it's not taking care of her. And when you start doing that, you start kind of giving your energy and your time away to other people, you start having less time for yourself, and that gets back to that hamster wheel feeling of I'm constantly doing things and not moving anywhere. Why is my time going away so quickly, right? So in this kind of mini exercise, you're trying to figure out what your main roles are, and then really focus on a specific number, in this case 6, that you can really handle that are manageable for you. So what I've often found is that when people commit to too many things in their life, they just, okay, now I'm like the soccer coach, and now I'm the football coach, and then I'm doing the little baseball league coach, and then I'm also taking this kid to school, and then I'm doing this. And you can see as you start adding more and more decisions to your day, you're removing your choice and your decisions for your own life, right? So at what point are you ever going to get out of that cycle because you keep taking things on, you keep thinking, okay, I need to do all these things, but you're not slowing down and figuring out, okay, are these roles really something that I want to continue to do for a certain amount of time? Okay, so that's kind of the focus for today. Quick recap. Quality of your life is determined by the quality of the decisions and the quality of the questions that you make. Okay? Going back to that fixed and growth mindset, it's a journey of constant improvement. You have to constantly look for a solution and think of, okay, how is this serving me to that longer term vision of what I want to create? And then lastly, where your time and then what you're committing to is ultimately going to dictate the kind of roles that you're really focusing on. All right, so that is pretty much week 1. Stop challenging the status quo. I'll upload some of these to the group, but that is essentially a high-level overview of what we'll be focusing on for week 1, just on the mental side. Okay, it'll help you as you're going through the course. Just think of, okay, how can I try something that'll put me forward, that'll allow me to get through this next lesson. All right.